So we've got Albert Caballero. He's a field security leader for SentinelOne. We actually go way back. We actually met when he was at HBO Latam. Lots of history there. And we also have Juan Villar, security architect for Securonics. He's got several years of experience from a cybersecurity perspective in the industry, about 10 years of experience. He's got over, I think, 5 or 6 different security certifications at this point, working on AWS ML as we speak. And then John Ford as well. So John Ford is a security practice leader for Mandiant, over 25 years of experience in the industry, including BI. All right, so definitely appreciate the time.
Thank you.
We'll jump right into it. So again, our focus today is going to be around cybersecurity from a smart defense perspective. Softball question to the team here. I talked to the leaders beforehand, and really the goal here is the panelists will walk through about 3 to 5 minutes for each question, and then we'll go through the discussion here. So first off, from an AI, ML perspective, there's lots of buzz in the industry. What are you guys seeing out there in terms of the trends, the terminology? How do you help your customers from that buzzword soup perspective and helping them clarify exactly what that means for you guys from a defense perspective? So I'll start with you, Albert.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all guys for joining us today. Yeah, acronym soup. I think AI is not the only area in cybersecurity that suffers from that. I think cloud is probably up there as well with all the new acronyms that are being presented. AI, as most of you already know, has been around for well over a decade in cybersecurity, right? It's not new. I think especially machine learning is something that we've been leveraging in everything from endpoint detection to network detection across the board in a lot of different areas of technology. I think what's new probably in the last year or two, as we know, is generative AI and how cybersecurity companies are implementing generative AI. There's a whole lot of situations, decisions that need to be made when implementing generative AI, and also separately the large language models, which of course can be and are part of generative AI, but also have their a whole operational workflow that really doesn't exist in companies today. So just in general, if you're very familiar with machine learning and AI, and you have an operational workflow in place for that, hopefully that can be then transferred into LLM, generative AI, and a workflow or an operational model that can be followed in that area. If not, it's white space, and there's a whole lot of catch-up to do, right? In that case, do open AI APIs, and don't implement it yourself.
Excellent response. Yep. Same question for you, Juan.
Yeah, yes, you have to cut from the hype of AI, the buzzwords, right? What is AI to the particular organization, to the particular customer, the person that you're talking to? What is it that they're going through on a day-to-day basis? What is that they're suffering to? What are their pain points? What are their use cases? And what do they think, or what their perception is that AI can do for them? And it's going to be our job as to educate to them what are the full capabilities or the limitations that AI can present in the environment. Organizations need to look at what their security posture is today, identify the gaps in that, and then us as responsible vendors, we're here to educate the customer on how AI can be used to reinforce your cyber operations, right? Whether that be learning the LLMs that are going to be specifically focused to that customer's business, that customer's vertical, what they do day to day by taking historical information to train the LLMs, and then consistently having that human factor that's being accountable for how the AI is configured, the type of data that it's seeing, so that it's outputting the proper results for the end user.
Oh, thanks. All right, it works. When we think about it, so if for those, from our perspective, we have some phenomenal companies represented here, right? SentinelOne has just phenomenal products. Securonics obviously been around for a great while, done great work. Mandiant itself, we've been around and really known for our role in the world is, you hear about us, you think of incident response, really being there in that crisis moment. And when we were there, we spend each year about 300,000 hours just doing incident response. That is a lot. Let me just put that out there. And we were already leveraging a lot of threat intelligence to help us get faster time to value for our clients so we can get them out of breach and into remediation and back in full stood up, right? And while we were already as Mandiant prior to the acquisition using a lot of our ML models at the time, we were really fortunate to be acquired by Google, right? Think about the people who wrote the paper on AI, right? They have best engineers in the world, and they also have the best and largest volumes of telemetry that you can possibly see. I think about the volume of internet traffic that goes through there and the value from a threat actor perspective that we can leverage to help our clients, right? So when we think about how do we use AI and ML in what we're doing today, we've already got exceeding faster time to value for our clients and what we're trying to do to help them get from a bad situation, or even better today, prevent them and validate their controls faster than anything that I've ever seen. We're doing areas now where we are moving security validation capabilities from land to sea in microseconds. We are supporting instances where we can do now, we had one that was dozens of countries at the same time. Being able to leverage that speed to value on one incident is incredible. So when I start thinking about how do we use AI and ML, and I think about everything that we're trying to achieve and all of our partners are trying to achieve today, leveraging cloud capabilities, all the technology ML capabilities, and leveraging bandwidth and security capabilities, I'm really very optimistic about what do these next 3 to 5 years look like? Because we used to be at a point where it was 416 days before an adversary was detected in network. It's down now to 10 days before they're ever detected. I'm hoping we can get that down to 10 seconds and get it before they have instantiation.
It's a great segue. Interesting point in terms of how you're leveraging AI in terms of the discovering those threat attacks. What we're seeing as well is the attackers are leveraging AI as well. I'm interested and curious to see what you guys see out there from that trend. Also, in terms of where you see that going in the future. And also, what's the one misperception that customers have out there in terms of those attack vectors as well?
So just round robin? Okay, my turn. Yeah, so scale and speed, right? As John was mentioning, that the automation and the scale and the speed at which Mandiant is performing today is unprecedented, and that is largely due to AI, not necessarily generative AI or LLMs, but more of the capability to assess in large data sets patterns, identify IOCs, attribute threats, right? Attackers are also going at this scale and speed, right? So we do have to be, and innovation, right? So aside from the deep fakes and the Biden robocalls and these things are certainly a concern and a vector through which a lot of organizations fall victim to cybercrime. But in addition to that, there are a whole lot more technical attacks that are leveraging AI to do a lot of the same things in the kill chain that we're familiar with. Drop malware, gather information, harvest identities. These are the things that malware is doing, has done, and will continue to do, because that's what they're after. How they do it, the methodology, the speed, and the scale at which they do it is being augmented by AI in every way. For example, some attackers are leveraging GANs, or generative adversarial networks, to run their malware through detection engines to see how well they can bypass that detection engine. GAN is actually a really simple concept. It sounds cooler than what it really is, but you just run something through a decision engine and it's either good or bad, right? But if you can run something bad through a decision engine that classifies it as good, that's good malware, right? That's what I'm going to use. That's what I'm going to sell. And that's what's going to scale and compromise more people. Just on that vein, I think that's what attackers are really, we got to be wary about.
Yeah, and just to pile up on that, the other thing that's important is, again, that human interaction, collaboration, make sure that our folks are properly trained from a security awareness perspective, right? We're all doing these security awareness around phishing, things like that. Security awareness on how to recognize some of these attacks that are being born out of artificial intelligence. I don't know if any of you watched the show Blue Bloods, right? For last Friday, they had an episode where they were transporting a criminal to the courthouse, and then the captain got a call, and it sounded exactly like the voice of the person that was going to pick up that prisoner, transport him. Obviously, they faked the voice, they faked the speech patterns, the psychology behind what that person normally speaks like. She gave them the time and date of where the criminal was getting picked up. They ended up getting assaulted by a strike force. People got killed, shot, whatever. But the point is, if that user had proper training on, hey, just don't listen to what the call is saying, right? Ask them questions. try and have a conversation with it where you can actually pick up, hey, this isn't the real human person that I've talked to for 25 years of my life. Right, so it's very important to enable your internal customers, right, how to identify the new threats that are going to be coming out there, that are going to be leveraging AI, how to recognize those. Phishing is another example. Right now I can go into ChatGPT, very simple, and say, hey, write a message to my procurement manager that I need a check sent to this account for a customer that was saying that we haven't paid them. And it could craft that email absolutely perfect, grammatically correct, in the form that a CEO would be asking for something like that, and the person is tricked. So again, enabling, training your internal customers, your internal organization, right, how to identify these threats that are coming on the landscape is important.
Yeah, I would say there's probably 4 big areas, right? You've got the malware development piece we've talked about, the phishing piece, I'd say business email compromises. But fourth, I would also flip the discussion, really more it's about training enablement and really employee enablement, right? So you have, from a malware development perspective, right, so we still know that this year, if you've read this current year's M-Trends report, right, 37% of all breaches occurred because of delivery of malware, period. Okay, that's an increase from last year. What this is also telling us is that last year had the highest record number of 0 days ever recorded. That's a problem, right? So we're seeing that there is, to the point, better development and testing of these 0 days before they're ever implemented, and no one's ever seen them. That's a larger challenge. From a phishing perspective, last year, phishing was number 3 as far as the most successful way to breach. Now it's number 2. It's come back, partially because, quite frankly, the languages are better. It doesn't look like somebody that wrote this that doesn't understand the English language wrote this, okay? But it has improved, and they've also made it much more tailored for the audience that they're going after. 3, from a business email compromise, what we're seeing today is the ability to mimic these actual communications, and in some cases, videos and audio can be mimicked to the point where it's convincing enough to support the one mission need of getting that transfer of monies. And I would say 4, though, is what is it doing for us, right? There is a piece, obviously, we're much more concerned about the adversary. All of us in the room are defenders of security of some point. And as defenders and security practitioners and those who are growing up here in Florida at our educational institutions, it's also enabling us to get a faster pipeline with higher expertise in a quicker amount of time to be able to help us defend these networks. So there are benefits out of that. I think that we want to also consider our leverage in that, because I think it will make us better practitioners in the future as well, and getting higher time to value in that ROI.
Excellent. Thanks for the responses. You guys have all touched on the ability of AI to generate multimedia content that mimics voice, mimics video, et cetera. That kind of flips into the conversation around privacy. So what do you guys see as far as the issues and challenges around privacy going forward? What are the things we need to be concerned with in terms of making sure that you're putting in a safe AI-based solution?
Yeah, great question. All the points that John, and Juan were making extremely valid. Privacy goes hand in hand with maybe regulation and governance. And I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here. There's certainly a lag in governance and regulations when it comes to AI. That being said, I'm bullish on AI, not bullish on regulation. Regulation stifles innovation, right? So we have to be careful with how we regulate. The EU, or the European Union, just passed an AI Act. I think it was pretty reasonable, and they modeled that in a way that classifies the level of risk with the AI in question, right? So I used to say self-driving cars, but that doesn't impress people anymore. So let's say you're in a plane and you're going across the Atlantic Ocean and there's no pilot on the plane. Listen, autonomous flying has been around for decades, right? So that's coming soon. And if 297 souls are on a plane and an AI is responsible for it, that's a different level of risk than if it's a game, right, that you're gaming online, or it's a chat bot, or it's some other type of GUI, ChatGPT type interface. Like, there's a whole lot less risk, and therefore should require a whole lot less governance. The problem is that privacy then becomes very easy to lose, because you get to a point where you're interacting with the generative AI model thinking that it's almost like a private message. Just keep in mind that when you're interacting and you're putting data into a generative AI chat GPT, unless it's for a fact it's hosted and local and private model, it's sending to everyone in Zoom, not to the person you're trying to send. So make sure that you understand you're sending to everyone when you're uploading any information when it comes to an LLM or someone else's generative AI interface.
Yeah, I think it's the Wild West right now when it comes to regulation with artificial intelligence, but we're starting to see some good steps being taken. Albert brought the EU point. The Biden administration, about 6-7 months ago, came out with their executive order mandating that all of the government agencies actually go and check what do they feel AI can do for them, what are the dangers, what are some of the pitfalls. I think they all responded back last week with each agency's in about 180 days. They all knew exactly.
Did you saw that spreadsheet? Yeah. Oh, we did this, we did this, we did this. They're like, get out of here.
They probably realistically spent 5 minutes on
the spreadsheet.
Yeah. On the spreadsheet, right. But no, I think you need to prioritize privacy by design, right? I think us as security vendors, different verticals, or be healthcare, financial, we need to work with the regulators to define what AI regulation is going to look like. So the important things that come to mind is data anonymization. When we're teaching these LLMs, we can't just teach it with, hey, Juan has these sets of symptoms and these diseases and these ailments. Recognize that in another patient if you're talking about healthcare. So anonymize that data as you're teaching these large learning models. How much information do they need to see, right? Do they need to see every single little bit, or do they only need the specific parameters that they need to learn from, right, to be able to make right decisions? Again, constant, not leaving this up to Skynet to eventually take over the world. There's got to be human collaboration, right, with the vendors that are building these LLM models to make sure that they're built responsibly, that they're democratized, right, so we don't have some machine learning out there using some type of bias when it's analyzing whatever it might be.
Yeah, take a slightly different take on this, if you don't mind, just by show of hands, just for fun, okay? Everybody has I'm assuming they have your iPhone, your Android or something here, right? Okay. By just a show of hands, okay? How many people have 20 or less apps on their phone? Yeah, no, not even close.
It comes loaded with like 25.
Okay, we're just
so that's a trick question.
Just so we can move forward, 50 to 100 by show of hands.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And every single time we click through everything because we want that app, because we want to play that game. We want to get access to the social media. We want to get access to our banking. We want to get access to whatever. And then every business has an app, and it just goes on. Correct? So we, as everyone here, have voluntarily said, you can have all of our information, including all the metadata on our phone. And we connect apps to apps. All of that predicts what our buying habits are going to be and what we're going to do and where we're going to travel and what our kids are going to want, etc. So we also as citizens have a duty to what that privacy and maintaining of our own personal information is. We do. We get upset when our information is stolen, but we have to be cognizant that we're the ones that also gave them the information, and we said we're going to trust you. What do we do here in this audience to vet the companies that you're giving your information to each time you say yes? We don't. We have a trust. And there becomes a symbiotic relationship about what is privacy. We have to consider what that trust model really looks like, what we're willing to do, what we're willing to accept, and what that willing risk is. Now, in the AI and ML world, of course, everyone is using it to their advantage. There's probably right now nearly 500,000 different data points on me alone. My data was stolen by the Chinese government when I was with the FBI. Everything, including my fingerprints. Literally have everything on me, including who I mowed lawns for when I was 9 years old. Okay? I don't know what the Chinese wanted to know about the guy I mowed lawns for when I was 9 years old, but they sure wanted it. And they have also used all of this data to their advantage. So it's not just companies, but we have to think about the government organizations that conduct counter-espionage and espionage capabilities to also do this. What is this data going to be used for, and how will it be used in what ways? I vote that we look at it, how do we better each other's lives? How do we look for these ideas around leveraging data that will improve our health? Data will improve the security of our homes, and security of our families. Right? These are the things that I want to provide my data to and to those organizations that are supportive of that. When I think about how do we make sure that the data is used appropriately, one of the areas that we see is most important to us is that how are organizations red teaming that AI model? We want to eliminate bias. You can't ask a computer a question and expect it's going to give back a response that's somehow neutral, because humans are the ones that provided the code to it. So we have to be very cognizant and very thorough. There has to be that human element to everything we do. The computer is not the end-all and be-all of everything. And we have an ethical responsibility to ensure, as we're red teaming, as we're challenging the information that is coming from that and challenging the information that's input into that. So you have your inputs and outcomes. Is it what we will see today that will benefit us in the future as people and as a community and as a nation? Those are just my thoughts.
Excellent. Thanks for the responses. Albert, you mentioned this concept of risk, right, based off of what is the solution that we're approaching to leverage AI. Doubling down on that, in terms of the actual false positives, false negatives, how are you envision us dealing with that going forward? And how do you expect solution providers to help ensure the accuracy of AI models going forward?
Yeah, great question. By the way, the whole data privacy, just for a second, I'm going to loop back. I feel like I'm an early adopter of AI, no question. I've been using AI platforms for over a decade. That being said, I'm a slow adopter of things that track my activity. But at some point, and this is to John's point, you have to live your life, right? I didn't buy a Sun Pass until they stopped putting humans in booths, in toll booths, right? But at some point, I had to buy the Sun Pass. Just the other day, I changed car insurances, and State Farm gave me like a massive discount if I put this little tracker in my car. Just throw it in your glove, connect it to your app.
You raise my rates every time I connect it.
Every time. You're going to have to buy the little thing, dude. And
because I speed and I drive a
okay, so you get the Fs when they score you instead of the As. But that's also a generality. So to just spin it back to the false positives, false negatives, there is certain AI that's really good at what it does. And there's other AIs that are good at what they do. The types of algorithms that you use. For example, detection of malware has become pretty solid, right? I obviously work for SentinelOne. We do a good job. So does 3 or 4 other vendors. I'm not going to say a dozen vendors but
they all have booths over there, by the way.
Yeah, they all have booths. We're all friends. But the point is that decision tree algorithms, XGBoost, these types of machine learning algorithms, nearest neighbors, clustering, these things that we're using today do a very good job at detection and eliminating false positives. Now, and Amanda knows this well, there's a certain fidelity or criticality to the type of detections that are found, right? And it's funny because there are things, what's living off the land, right? That's a big deal. So what is malware and what is not? It turns out that regular benign software and binaries are leveraged for nefarious activities all the time, right? So it's not just about the false positive and false negative on a single atomic artifact, right? Whether it's a file or an IOC, a hash, whatever it is, it's understanding are these behaviors happening in a way that's going to lead to an unauthorized outcome. And the sooner that you identify these chain of behaviors, then the sooner that you can classify something as a high fidelity true positive. But beyond that, everything is gray, right? This is bad, right? But beyond that, is it high? Is it medium? Is it low? What's your environment look like? What's your operations look like? Is it high to me and low to you, right? So it's a matter of understanding the fidelity of the event and then, like everything else, just gathering more information. Sorry if I went long.
No worries. No. So false positives, false negatives, even before the days of AI, it was because somebody had misconfigured a policy or this service account logs in from this application every single day, right? I don't need to be flooded with alerts on that, right? So exposing the AI to the data sets that are pertinent for that organization, for that vertical, for the nation that they're in, right? A financial institution in the United States is not going to have the same data sets that a European, right? So you're not going to have one AI working in one, delivering a bunch of false positives when it should be working in the other one, right? So there has to be that ensemble learning, that exposure to various types of data sets to teach it properly. And then, of course, again, always involving human interaction, human accountability, human responsibility to make sure that the data sets that the AI is seeing, that the results, that the information that it's providing back is passed through some pretty rigorous testing, right? So human interaction with those feedback loops falls into that category as well.
Yeah, I guess where I would see is that there's a lot of positives that if we can, and as all of us as practitioners have done before, to your point, there can be an indicator, there can be something, and for you it's negligible, and for me it's the most serious thing in the world. But how is that determination made, right? There is such disparity when I talk to C-level executives and boards that every piece of malware is the same as every other piece of malware, and all of them are bad, and it's just what it is. And if you get an alert, all alerts are bad, all alerts are high. If it's low over here, why is it a high? They don't understand it. But it's also not their job to understand that as well. As security professionals, it's our job to be able to provide that professional advisory to them and give them the context of what matters. And the context ends up being, at the end of the day, to your point, data. And what is that data that tells us this? It's usually the threat intelligence that we have gathered. It's the telemetry from around the world. It's watching past behaviors of actors and how they have performed in environments and what their overall objectives were. It can be those that we're already talking to on the dark web and we know what their future actions are going to be and the type of command and control infrastructure that they're going to be setting up and the reconnaissance that they're going to be doing to do what mission. It can be large data sets like we have with some of our accounts where we actually leverage Google's BigQuery capabilities. You need that kind of capability to go through those mountains of data that nothing else can do. And you start bringing all these data points together that's impossible for a human or an old script like we used to have to do to pull data together, and you need it in microseconds. Because the adversary, once they get into your environment, their whole goal is to stay there as long as they can, undetected, to do whatever they want to do. They will let you know, either A, on purpose, that they're there because maybe ransomware was deployed and they've already done what their actions are going to be, or you need to get ahead of them. I do all the election security for Mandiant. I head this for the company. We only get 18 hours to get it right, and quite frankly, we only get about 120 minutes to get it right during all the transmission of votes. That's it. That's all you get. And can you imagine the hundreds of jurisdictions that I protect during election time? And I have to protect that small window of time and be able to deploy with the accuracy of the intelligence that we have around the planet to ensure that all of those votes that were validly cast validly make it and are counted correctly. And it takes that understanding of why those highs and lows really matter. It takes the ability to take literally over a quarter of the world's adversary internet traffic and cull that down into a microsecond of time and say this is what matters. It takes 17 years of intelligence that's been gathered in every country in the world and try to make a decision and get it right every time. And so when we talk about how can this really help us, think about the times in our life where there's two things that matter. You don't have a choice but to get it right once, or you're in crisis and you've got to be there to answer to help some child that may be on an operating table at that time and they can't get through to the OR. Those are the kind of things that we all get to face each day when we're responding to these crises. And we have to take that amount of information and make it useful and get it right. I think there's a great place for how we do this today. It's only going to get better. I think we actually do, though, need a security model, language model, quite frankly. You cannot use an AI model that's designed for really the spoken language and translate that into security language. I'm confident. I know there are people that are working on it. Of course, we are as well. But that model will also expedite that it can get us to answers faster. But I am very encouraged. Nothing happier today than when Google acquired us. Quite frankly, they have some of the best people on the planet understanding this. And it's really allowed us as a vendor-agnostic company, because we don't have competitors in our space. We are a vendor-independent company. We work with every company in the world, and our only job is to secure. That's it. It's great to now that today I can actually be on stage with everybody, and we're not talking as competitors, but we're talking as people who are trying to secure an ecosystem.
That's a great segue. So again, just in terms of us all working together from an automation perspective, we've got about a minute left within the next 30 seconds or so. What's your perspective?
Yeah,
on that?
AI is automation. Automation is AI. That's all I got to say about that.
Rapid fire.
Yeah, I worked at a SOAR vendor that your company acquired a few years back. I'm very familiar with the early days of SOAR and manually creating playbooks and manually creating like what steps should follow if I saw this hash was bad on VirusTotal. Bringing all that into AI now is going to be able to automatically create those playbooks or suggest. I always like to have human interference here. The AI suggests what the automation path should be for a particular threat out there. Recommend that. Go over with a fine-tooth comb as the human and hit the approval and enable button on it.
Yeah, I would say the area I'm most excited about is how using AI in what we call security validation, right? Being able to validate your security controls with the real attacks in real time before it happens. It's a great idea to be able to know, have that incident breach report today that instead of tomorrow, so you can fix things. So being able to do that at scale now is just absolutely amazing, and it's helped so many of our clients globally. And if I leave you with anything today, breaches are bad, but let's try to get ahead of it, right? Let's go ahead and work on the validating of the security control stack and making sure those controls are supposed to do exactly what they do in concert with each other and getting everything to where it needs to be.
Awesome. Definitely appreciate the time. I think we're out of time, but great responses.
Thank you, folks.
A round of applause.
Thank you, everyone.